11th of October 2024, voice note number 11. We're going to move on and briefly discuss the Films and Publications Act and how it actually applies to the WhatsApp groups with reference to the general users and also the administrators. Now, in terms of the Films and Publications Act, it must be stated firstly that there are certain parts of the Act that have not been finalized as yet, and certain regulations still need to be put in play and in place for that matter. This is a lengthy process because now the minister has to, in actual fact, have a public input before he actually implements any regulations. And those regulations are the ones that are going to now criminalize certain aspects of the act and actions that we have to contend with on WhatsApp as well as other social media platforms. That is on the criminal aspect. So to give you an idea, using the example of somebody now stating, go ahead and shoot that group, shoot that person, or whatever the case might be, we can take it a step further. Somebody posts something on a group and it's racist in nature, which is something that shouldn't be happening, at the best of times. But people are doing it. People are, in actual fact, bringing up racist comments and making racist remarks. Now, generally people think, well, if I put this up on the group, then I'm the only person that's liable for it. And I keep on stating, no, you're not, because the administrators are also legally liable for it. You see, in terms of the Films and Publications Act, every single person and every single entity that is involved in sharing that information, posting that information, allowing that information of a racist nature or incitement to violence, according to the Films and Publications Act, you form part of the chain of publication. And I think the best example that one can use is perhaps when it comes to dealing with drugs, for example. We've seen recently, in the past month in particular, there have been several arrests made at OR Tambo, whereby mules have been arrested after ingesting pouches of drugs and swallowed them and then brought them into the country. You see, you don't go, the authorities don't go after the distributor or the dealer or the user, but also the mule. In other words, the person that is involved in assisting in distributing of the drug or illicit contraband medication, whichever way you want to look at it. Every single person that is involved in the chain of that distribution or in the chain of that publication, whether that publication be a film or whether it be text or whether it be a photograph, anything that is posted to social media is considered a publication when it is posted. And every administrator is then part of that chain. And even though there might be certain regulations that still need to be implemented, just bear in mind that from a civil perspective, the aggrieved party, the person who is injured, not physically injured, but injured in terms of the defamation or whatever the case might be, they have a right to actually bring civil charges against the publisher, the initial publisher, and every other person that has shared it out on social media, including the administrators. So administrators and Dispatchers, please take particular note that you will and can be held liable for the sharing of that information. And if you allow that information to remain on the WhatsApp group, then you still form part of that chain of publication, especially now that you've got the capability to delete it from the group for the benefit of everybody. And even though the other administrators might not see it, if you as an administrator see the racist remarks or comments and you don't delete it, please bear in mind, you are placing your other administrators at risk of both a criminal and a civil case against them as well. Right, let's end off voice note number 11 now. 11th of October 2024. Let's move on with the Act as we continue the admin and dispatcher training series. The Cybercrimes Act, on the other hand, is also a very important act for administrators and especially dispatchers to be aware of. Because within this act, there's two major aspects of the act that need to be considered. The first one is considered bullying. Now, most people think bullying only occurs in school environments or among school children. It doesn't. It also can take place in the workplace, and it can take place within WhatsApp and social media groups. And that bullying comes in many forms of where one person, the bully, is constantly picking on and attacking another person whom they consider to be inferior or otherwise, whatever the reason might be. That is inappropriate behavior, and not only is it inappropriate, it is now a criminal offense. And it falls under the Cybercrimes Act in particular, because what they have discovered now is a lot of this bullying is taking place via social media, via internet connectivity, etc., etc. So administrators need to be aware of the fact that, and I think you need to ask yourself two questions. Would you allow those statements or remarks to be made against you, number one, or number two, against your own children? And if the answer is no, then it's quite simple. You have to delete those messages off of the group, end of the story, no questions asked, no further discussion. It must be taken off of the group. And of course, the group must be reminded of the rules that bullying, for example, or being disrespectful will in actual fact not be tolerated, etc., etc. The other aspect of the Cybercrimes Act, which also ties up with the Forms and Publications Act, is the sharing of sexually explicit material, especially where such material has been obtained through incorrect manners or methods. So where there is inappropriate, or what would be considered inappropriate photographs shared on a group, but they were between two consenting adults, and somebody else now, picks up the phone and finds it, and then they start sharing those photographs out into the public domain or WhatsApp groups or whatever, that is a criminal offense as well. Also, between two consulting adults, if one adult now decides to seek revenge, this is where the revenge porn aspect comes into play, then they start posting the photograph of the jilted lover or of the ex-lover, and they start posting that out on social media. It's also a criminal offense. The same thing now can be said with regards to administrators not deleting those images off of the WhatsApp groups. I mean, most people would just consider it inappropriate, pornographic, end of the story. But as an administrator, if you allow it to remain there and you don't delete it, of course, you are legally liable yet again. Because at the end of the day, whether or not maybe one of the children pick up an adult's phone and they find the photograph and then they send it out on a school group, or they send it out on any other WhatsApp group, or whatever the case might be, or for example, a child picks it up and they post it out on a local WhatsApp group of the parents, or where the parents are members of a group, then the parents are legally liable and responsible for the publication of those images as well. So parents also need to be aware of the fact that they can't just allow their children to make use of their cell phones anymore. The days of sitting there and allowing the kids to play with a cell phone, well, that they can actually open up serious consequences for the parent who is considered to be the publisher, as well as for the administrators. So it must be noted on that point that this now does become a little bit of a problem. Now on voice note, I'm going to end voice note number 12, and we're going to carry on with the next voice note to, in essence, discuss distribution of photographs of motor vehicle accidents and victims and injured persons. So let's end off at number 12 now and move on. 11 October 2024, we're continuing with voice note number 13. And for voice note number 13, I'm actually moving on a slight deviation from the Cybercrimes Act and the Films and Publications Act. And I specifically want to cover the publishing of photographs and videos on social media in the general sense of the word, but more specifically towards victims of violence, specifically to injured persons and to motor vehicle accidents. Now, the one thing that I want to point out here is that there's a lot of controversy in this, because everybody first shouts Poppy Act. No, the Poppy Act's got nothing to do with it. The second thing that people shout, yeah, but it's defeating the ends of justice in the same way of sharing information pertaining to roadblocks, etc. And none of this applies. But the third argument that is thrown in is the Police Services Service Act, whereby it is stated that you may not share photographs of subjects, of suspects. Now, this is where we need to be a little bit careful. With regards to victims of violence, again, you need to ask yourself a question. Would you like to see your daughter's photograph suddenly appear on a social media platform stating that she got beaten up by X, Y, or Z? I'm not saying it had to be a partner. It could have been as a result of a mugging or anything along those lines. Secondly, would you like it to be another family member, a brother, a sister, whatever? And if you answer no to those two questions, then ultimately that is something that should not be published in the public domain. The Constitution does provide that everybody has the right to decency. And even though there's nothing specific in terms of the previous acts, our Bill of Rights could in actual fact place you at risk of a civil lawsuit or violating one's constitutional right through the South African Human Rights Commission for sharing that information. So please be aware of that aspect. The other thing is, from a paramedical or medical side, they are not allowed to share that information. That is a criminal offense, guaranteed. It's covered in the health regulations. There's no question about it. It is just, there's no argument with that. And the same thing now applies to injured persons, or persons that are injured as a result of other acts of violence or motor vehicle accidents or shootings or whatever the case might be. Social media users have a habit of taking photographs and then publishing it on Facebook, on WhatsApp, etc., etc. One needs to ask, should your family member be involved in an accident and you see the photograph and recognize the registration number, what is your first reaction going to be? In most instances, and this is probably going to be longer than 5 minutes, in most instances, as a family member of somebody that you've just seen being involved in an accident, especially where a location has been shared, you might want to rush out there to go and help them. And in so doing, get involved in an accident of your own accord, if not worse than being injured, you could be killed. So there's a lot of factors with regards to sharing those photographs of a motor vehicle where the vehicle or the family or the person can be identified by family members due to, for example, the registration number, or even a straightforward photograph showing the person's face, etc., whatever the case might be. So when it comes to injured people and victims of violence, it is always advisable, as well as their motor vehicles, etc., etc., it is always advisable not to share that information where those people can be identified. Blur it out. Blur out the face. Blur out the clothing of the injured person. Blur out the registration number if you have to. That way you can show the extent of the damage from a public's perspective for the benefit of other people in the area, without actually compromising the victim of violence or the victim of injury. And then the same thing applies when we start looking at suspects. Now, when it comes to suspects, it's a very different ballgame, because the Police Service Act, I think it's Section 68, quite categorically stipulates that no photograph or representation of a suspect may be published without SAPS's permission and authority, but it does state of a suspect who is in custody. So the general guy walking down the street, you're more than welcome to photograph him and share your photograph. Even the private security service providers. If you are on WhatsApp groups and there's a suspicious activity or person acting in a suspicious manner, there's nothing stopping you legally. But the minute that you detain him and place him in custody on suspicion of having committed a crime, then you may not do it. Until then, you can do it. And as you know, from a private security service provider's perspective, you've got to go follow the procedures of handing him over to SAPS, etc., etc. So to members of the general public, you want to take a photograph of this suspicious character, you need to make sure that the private security service providers have not placed him in custody and that they don't suspect him of committing a crime, or you need to double check that with SAPS, who might be on scene, because if SAPS have actually placed him under arrest or have detained him, no, you cannot post those photographs. And because of the fact that those photographs are published, administrators again can be held liable and accountable. So one has to be able to ascertain whether the private security response officer has placed that person in custody, or if SAPS has placed him in custody before the photograph is shared. So there has to be some communication between the photographer, who is the initial publisher, and any other persons. And this is again where it becomes a little bit concerning. Joe Bloggs takes a photograph of somebody who might be in custody and sends it to a second person, and then that person goes and publishes it on a general community group. This is where it becomes problematic with regards to social media when we forward messages. That is, it is not something that we personally made the video of or took the photograph of. It's not our original works, but it is the works of somebody else. In terms of the Copyright Act, it is termed original works by the person who takes the photograph. But in terms of the Films and Publications Act, you are part of the publication chain when you in actual fact take that photograph and forward it on to other groups. So it is a very, very important, and there are documents that I will make available to the administrators and to the dispatchers, which I'd really suggest you read it in detail. And if you've got to go through it 2 or 3 times, make the effort to understand the liability that lies behind those documents so that you fully grasp the risk and the concept of what is right, what is wrong, what is ethical, what is moral, what is in actual fact legal, and what is illegal. So at this point, I will post these documents as well as the documents regarding the POPI Act, because in voice note number 14, I want to categorically cover missing persons and children in particular. All right, so for voice note number 14 on the 11th of October 2024, I want to discuss the sharing of missing persons information and children in particular. And I want to see if I can keep this under 10 minutes in total, but not split it over two VNs. What needs to be understood is this: the longer a person waits to actually raise the alarm when it comes to a missing person, and in particular a missing child, the less likely we are to find that person safe. Most times, the longer that it goes on, those people are found either injured or deceased. And administrators need to be very careful with regards to what they delete or not permit on their group, because again, as I've said previously, you know, that administrators are responsible for what they do post or allow to be posted. However, on the opposite side of that same coin, group administrators may very well be responsible for what they do not post or what they delete. So, for example, a person, a family member raises the alarm, a person has gone missing, and they put information out on Facebook or on a WhatsApp group, and they say, please contact me, and they give a telephone number. Then people jump on the bandwagon, admins. No, but you can't. This is against the POPI Act. No, it's not against the POPI Act. This is something that has to be raised immediately. Yes, there is a procedure. I'm not going to go through the procedure. I will share the documentation and the infographics. Every administrator, every dispatcher needs to fully understand that process. If you fully understand that process, then you will be in a better position to deal with the information that is put out on social media. Now, is it advisable for a family member to state, my son or my daughter's missing, please contact me? I'll give you a bit of case history. One incident, minutes after speaking to the mother, she received a telephone call and then phoned me back afterwards, totally hysterical, telling me that this guy had phoned her and he's a Nigerian and he's busy raping her daughter and she has to pay money. Now, that's the danger of putting that information out. What we should in actual fact do as administrators is maybe delete the post, although I must admit that post has probably gone out on Facebook and, you know, the telephone number is being compromised. It's now in the public domain and they could still be subject to it. But as administrators, we should make a plan and actually lead that person, that family member, into the appropriate way of dealing with that missing person. So whatever you do, try and judge the circumstances, have a look at what the post says, take some responsibility for your group, share the relevant information, get that person to follow the right track, and to go and report the case to SAPS and to get a recognized flyer distributed instead of their own information. Some family members or group members might reach out to administrators asking for help and asking for assistance. A lot of admins countrywide are referring them to me, and then I make contact with that particular person, or that person makes contact with me, and I help them through the step-by-step procedure to get the recognized flyer out for the benefit of finding that family member. Now, when it comes to children, again, you know, people are putting photographs out there, my child is missing, or we've had cases where Photographs are put out. We've got this child that was found, and they at such and such a police station. And then group members and admins, you're not allowed to share the information with children. What utter hogwash. There is no such a law that says they may not share the photograph of their child. Even in the POPI Act, where the children are in actual fact mentioned, a parent may provide a child's information directly to the public body or to a government body, a private body. So your public and private bodies can be given information by the parents or a caregiver. In other words, if you've got somebody taking care of your child while you are at work and that child goes missing, the caregiver has got every legal responsibility. I'm not even talking about a right. I'm talking about a responsibility to raise the alarm and to start making contact with people to see where the child is, to see if they can find them. They've got the legal responsibility, just like a parent has, to get the information out and to start seeking that child as quickly as possible, and to alert communities, which is why you take the case of Jocelyn in the Eastern Cape. Several months later, people are still looking for her. You can get communities involved, search parties can be formed, and those children can be found due to the raising of the alarm through social media. So admins, do not delete those messages. Follow the same process, make contact with the contact person and step them through it. Let them get to SAPS, let them get a recognized flyer produced and distributed. Get it out as far and wide as possible and see what you can do. There are many organizations that will assist in missing persons. Whatever you do, I don't care what group it is that you might be an administrator on. You know, it might be an emergency group specifically to deal with motor vehicle accidents. It could be a group just to deal with a knitting club. I don't care which group it is. Whatever you do as an administrator, allow those photographs, those posts of missing people, and in particular missing children, to be posted on the group, because I can assure you, sometime at some point, an administrator is going to delete a request for help to find a missing child on whatever group it is. And that child is going to be found dead several days later. And the family are going to start asking questions, especially if the family is on the group where you, as an administrator, whoever you might be, have deleted that information. They can in actual fact claim you are the one that is criminally liable for the death of their child. Always bear that in mind. And the same thing applies to lost children. Never ever assume that because that person is at SAPS, it cannot be shared. It must be shared under every single aspect of the Children's Act must be taken into account. The Children's Act in actual fact has a statement in it to a total of 58 times. And that statement is, in the best interest of the child. There is nothing else that takes preference over in the best interest of the child. And that could even apply to medical information as far as the POPI Act is concerned, and to personal information regarding the child. Because, for example, a child with autism, or a Down syndrome child, or a child with special needs, a child with a mental health disorder, that information must be made known, must be made available on the flyers to the groups, so that every single member of the group, every member of a search party must know how to approach a child, especially a child with autism. You don't just approach a child with autism and try and grab hold of them and take them to a place of safety. That child is going to perform. He's or she is going to rant and rave. They're going to flap their arms. They're going to scream and screech, and they're going to spin in circles, and they're going to what one would consider a tantrum. It's not a tantrum. Everybody needs to be aware of that. And another thing, if you find or come across a child, or somebody comes across a child in a public place like a street, and you try and secure that child, always remember other people that are driving past can be picking up the phone and dialing 112 and claiming a kidnapping in progress, and you're going to find yourself arrested as a group member. And therefore, as an admin, be aware of these simple little things that need to be considered when it comes to children. Okay, I'm going to end this off. The document will be there published as well for your benefit. And of course, all of these documents, you may share it on groups, you may share it with other people. There is no limit or limitation to the sharing. It's therefore the edification of communities, administrators, and of course, dispatchers. But so let me end off voice note number 14. All right, so moving on with voice note number 15. I think the previous voice notes covering the sharing of information, photographs, etc., of victims, and also the brief discussion on the POPI Act and the brief discussion on sharing of children's information, missing children, their information in a public domain. I think it's been covered to a reasonable degree, and I don't want to go any further in it, as there are three commentary documents that I have, actually extensive commentary documents that I have put together. And I firmly believe that not only should the group members read these documents, but administrators should really study these documents in detail, specifically because of the fact that a lot of the legislation and the regulations, the various sections of the Act and the regulations pertaining to the various acts are covered in reasonably specific detail. And I think if admins in actual fact fully understand the concept of those three documents, they will find it a lot easier to be able to manage and administer their own groups, whether they are emergency groups or general community groups. And it is on this basis that I think we need to move on now. And actually, I'm going to move it over to voice note number 16. I'll start the group members' responsibilities as a separate voice note altogether. But I just wanted to round off with the sharing of the information. So firstly, in the general sense of the word, the POPI Act, to summarize, the POPI Act does not apply to anything on WhatsApp at all, except there is a slight exception when it comes to direct marketing. However, that applies across the board, not just to the WhatsApp groups, etc. So whichever way we look at it, the POPI Act doesn't apply. And when it comes to sharing of photographs of victims of violence, injured persons, or any vehicles, registration numbers or vehicles that can be identified, that means even if it is a company bakkie or a work bakkie or whatever, with the name of the company, etc., is visible in the photograph, should not be shared, because even though there's no act or law that actually prohibits it, in actual fact, it does not make it moral or ethical, and it can, in actual fact, be problematic. Just on a side note, the one area that I would like to briefly cover within this voice note number 15 is the sharing of roadblock information and police action that might be taking place on the road. And briefly, I want to stipulate there is no law that says you may not share that information in a public domain. Firstly, remember, roadblocks and speed traps and police action are all in the public domain. They are taking place in the public. Members of the public can see it. but there is no law that says you may not publish that information on WhatsApp or social media and notify other people to the effect that there is a roadblock at a particular location. There is no law against it. Now, I know that there's a lot of media reports and many policemen, etc., will state, yeah, but by doing so, a person can be found guilty of defeating or obstructing the course of justice. Well, one needs to understand that by law, in order to do that, there are a couple of things that need to be in place. First and foremost, the action, i.e., of posting the messages of a roadblock or of a speed trap must be unlawful. And as I've just said, there is no law that says it's unlawful. So it is not unlawful, but there's a word and in the definition that says, and intentionally engaging in conduct which defeats or obstructs the course or administration of justice. So in this particular instance, one needs to understand that whilst the action may in actual fact or the person may intentionally be engaging in conduct which defeats or obstructs the course or administration of justice, it cannot actually apply because the unlawful aspect is not part and parcel of the equation. It has to be unlawful and it has to be intentional. And in the case of posting that information, it is not unlawful, even though it might be intentional. Therefore, it does not constitute defeating or obstructing the course of justice. And personally, I think that, okay, a lot of people will say, well, the criminals on the group are going to see it and they're going to avoid the roadblock. I'd actually go the opposite way. For the criminals to be on the group, they would probably have had to have stolen a cell phone of somebody who was on the group that they can see where it is. But they might as well just open up Waze, and Waze will tell them in any event. So what's the problem here? Whether Waze is broadcasting the location or whether somebody else is putting it on a WhatsApp group, what is the problem? What is the concern? I'd take it a step further and say, well, look, people, let's say, for example, traveling down the November 1, find a message on their cell phone that says at William Nicol or Bayers or whatever the new street names might be, there's a speed camera and the guy's doing 140. I'd rather him know about it and slow down to 120, because for the next 10 or 15 kilometers, he'll stick to 120. And he's going to reduce the possibility of being involved or causing an accident at 140. So there's a lot of controversy about it. Personally, tell the group members there's nothing illegal about it, but just try and monitor it so that it doesn't create a problem on your groups. Okay, I think that covers it in the general sense. Let's move on with the group users' responsibilities in the next voice note. So I'm ending voice note number 15 now. All right, let's continue with voice note number 16. Today is actually the 14th of October 2024. In this 5-minute segment, I quickly want to cover briefly the group members' responsibilities. And if one understands, if administrators and dispatchers understand group members' responsibilities, it does in actual fact assist you and provide you a platform and the basis on which to base and form your group rules. Especially when you start looking at all the previous voice notes and the future voice notes that will be covered here. So basically, group members, their main responsibility of being responsible group members is to always abide by the group rules. And therefore, they should never, ever spam the group, whether it be in advertising or in messaging itself. So if you have group rules that says no advertising, definitely they shouldn't spam it. Or if they shouldn't post outside of any time periods where advertising may be permitted. Or if it is a general group where you do permit advertising, well, then they shouldn't be sending hundreds of messages in a day. And most definitely, they shouldn't post an ad with like 20 images. Post an ad with 1, 2 images. I think that would be fine and acceptable to other group members. Group members need to understand that not everybody has got access to fiber. Not everybody is on unlimited. A lot of group members, in actual fact, work on data packages where they only get a couple of 100 megs, 500 megs, 1 gig of data a month. And therefore, priority should be given to the sharing of emergency-related information. And the minute that group members start posting very big images and videos and whatever, it does utilize the group members' data. And, towards the end of the month, then they don't have data. And then they're not made aware of any of the emergency-related information that might be posted to the groups. The second main purpose or the main responsibility, let me try that again. The second major main responsibility for group members is to stick to the purpose of the group. So, for example, you could have a general chat group. Fine, everybody can chat about everything. But that chat group could have rules that stipulate no politics. So by abiding by the group rules, no politics, the topic of the group is a general chat, excluding politics, and therefore group members need to stick to it. Or it might be a group specifically for emergency purposes or the reporting of emergencies or requesting assistance. Then group members should, in actual fact, only post when they need assistance. Otherwise, they should remain silent. And they shouldn't be posting anything else other than a request for assistance or providing legitimate feedback to the particular group itself. Now, on that particular point of an emergency group, where one person now comes forward and says, I need an ambulance, then the dispatchers and admin should deal with that person and that person only. All other group members should remain silent. Group members shouldn't just come forward and start asking questions and start giving their opinion and posting comments, etc., etc. And I think in the next voice note, I want to talk about specifically the posting of medical advice on the group itself. So the group members should, in actual fact, stick to the purpose of the group. And if the group is to request assistance, then that's all that they should post. And the same thing applies to administrators. Administrators shouldn't bring in other conversations into any of the posts that are putting out on the group. And they most definitely should not, administrators should not, in actual fact, engage in these types of conversation. Administrators must, in actual fact, either delete the unnecessary messages or posts and concentrate on the topic and incident at hand. In addition to that, if the group, say, for example, is to discuss knitting patterns, well, then you shouldn't be bringing up water outages and electrical outages on that group for knitting or even on the emergency group. It becomes very difficult when people start posting memes and good mornings and adverts and or anything else that are against the group purposes. All of that should, in actual fact, be removed and deleted from the group. And if the members consistently insist on posting these messages, then unfortunately administrators should, in actual fact, remove the person from the group and not be subjected to peer pressure and having certain group members insist that a particular person must be on the group for whatever reason, no matter who they are. If they are removed for breaking the group rules, then administrators shouldn't put them back on the group because they are not setting a good example. Not only that, always remember that on a group of 1,000 people, one person abuses the group. You remove that person, he's got 5 or 10 friends, and 5 or 10 friends come up and they insist that person's put on the group. Meantime, you put the guy back up on the group and you lose 50 of your group members. That is not beneficial to your community. Rather lose 1 or 2 people, and even if the friends of 5 to 10 want to exit the group, then yes, you can in actual fact remove them from the group as well. And finally, don't share irrelevant messages about other topics. And definitely don't be offensive or crude in your posts. Respect the group members must always respect other group members, and definitely all of the other group admins as well. All right, so I'm going to bring that to the end of group of the voice note number 16, and we will continue in 17 shortly. Right, moving on with voice note number 18. In this particular voice note, I specifically want to cover the posting of medical advice or recommendations. Now, this is something that is primarily geared towards group members and the group members' responsibilities. However, it definitely does apply to administrators and to dispatchers. And I want to make it quite clear in simple terms. It is illegal to provide or post information to any person or group which is of a medical nature, whether in a person or when using social media. So therefore, regardless of what happens, you may not, doesn't make a difference who you are, you may not post or give any medical advice unless you are registered with the Health Professionals Council of South Africa. Only they are allowed, i.e. doctors, nurses, paramedics are also permitted to do it. I don't think basic ambulance is allowed to provide medical advice because they're not on the paramedical and above category. So one has to be very, very careful. Anything, even if you're not even allowed to tell a person to go and take a Disprin, for example. And the reason for this is you might suggest to somebody, even a friend, that they should take such and such a tablet. But the contraindications you are not aware of, number one. Number two, you're not aware of the fact or would not be aware of any facts whereby that person who does take a particular tablet, there might be something in that tablet to which they are allergic, such as penicillin or even aspirin for that matter. So it is extremely dangerous to do it. And then, in all honesty, even from the paramedical side, those that are qualified at the higher level generally would not, in actual fact, provide such information or recommendations into a public domain, because there's a lot of factors to take into account. One, you do not know the overall circumstances. Two, you cannot see the overall circumstances. Three, what a person is telling you may not always be true and correct. And yes, there are dispatchers that are trained to provide assistance in times of an emergency. I know myself, I've done it telephonically, and we've had a successful resuscitation on an 80-year-old grandmother. But it is not something that one does on a regular basis. Let me put it to you that way. There are so many situations, there are so many factors, there are so many concerns that need to be addressed, that the average paramedic is able to examine a scene, a situation, an area very quickly. And an experienced paramedic is able to read the conditions of the surrounding area, the overall, the mechanism of injury, the way the patient is lying, the way the patient is responding, even the way the bystanders, witnesses, and families are in actual fact responding. And the more experienced paramedic will in actual fact be able to assist, but definitely not remotely, because they cannot see those incidents taking place around them, which can all actually contribute to a successful rescue or an unsuccessful rescue. But it also places every single person in a medical legal danger, if you are a paramedic and above, and if you are a member of the public, of being charged either with a criminal offense, even if it is negligence on the part of a paramedic, if they fail to do something as per their scope of practice, they could be charged with negligence and not providing a standard level of care. And if they, in actual fact, do provide any of this advice remotely, without knowing those overall circumstances, they quite possibly will, in actual fact, be negligent by not providing substantial or crucial or critical information, which may have resulted in saving that person's life. And then, of course, on the opposite side of the coin, by failing to provide relevant information, that patient's life could have been lost. And even if it's not of a criminal nature, always remember that family members, life insurance policies, medical aid companies could, in actual fact, bring a civil claim against you to claim back any losses which they may experience. Okay, so I'm going to end that off on voice note number 18. And I think I'm going to move on now with the administrator's responsibilities, which will probably be hopefully only 2 voice notes, at which point we will close off on the administrative side and move more specifically to the dispatches. And I can't remember if I dated this, 14 October 2024. Moving on with voice note number 19. On the 14th of October 2024. I want to, in closing on the administrative side, just have a look at the administrator's responsibilities overall. Firstly, you are responsible for whoever joins your group. You can't just let anybody join your group. You've got to abide by your group's rules and also by the purpose of the group. So, I mean, if people are there to discuss knitting, you can't have motor mechanics coming in there and demanding that they discuss motor mechanics. I mean, that just wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't be fair or respectful to the other group members. However, that being said, the one thing that I would like to caution all administrators on is a twofold aspect. The person who created the group owner, is the one that actually defines the purpose of the group at the end of the day. Sure, he can decide on different rules, change the rules at any time, especially after there's been discussion with administrators, etc. But those group owners need to fully understand that the admins must, in actual fact, be aware of what the group's purpose is all about. So again, if it is a knitting group and you get 2 administrators who suddenly want to start discussing motor mechanics, well, then group owners, I'm going to be quite honest with you, throw those other 2 idiots off. They got no business being on the group. They are there to support the purpose of the group, which is for the benefit of the group and the group members. It is not there, they are not there to come and dictate different terms and set up a different, I call it the hijacking of a group. Don't allow members of the group or even other administrators to hijack the group. So, for example, if a group owner has created a group specifically for emergency requests or emergency messages, that's it. It's about emergency messages. It's not up to any other group member or admin to come in there and say, well, now we're going to discuss this and we can ask questions and then throw their toys out of the cot and expect to say on the group. Sorry, group admins, you are not doing your group or your community any good at all. You yourself, as a group owner and your group admins, must always be on the same page, without question, without doubt. So that's the second point. Be on the same page. Be of one mind. always ensure that you abide by the group rules and be very swift in acting against any unwanted or illegal content or disrespectful group members or group admins for that matter. Don't allow anybody to disrespect the group and let them get away with it. It is not on. For example, one group admin cannot turn to another group admin and stipulate you must get a life. Or a group admin can't turn around to a group member and tell a group member that they got to stop being childish. That's not the way that it works. It is also members to turn around to admins and tell admins that they should, in actual fact, change whatever the case might be. Take it privately and have a separate conversation, but don't come and be disrespectful on the group or call the group admins idiots or anything along those lines, not in a public domain. You've always got to lead by example, and that's not an easy... Sorry, my voice note's probably going da-da-da. That is definitely not an easy task. You've got to act swiftly. You've got to lead by example. And please never forget that the admins on a group are legally liable for every single thing that is posted on their group. And as I've said in previous voice notes, they're also responsible for things that they do not share, which could be of a life-saving nature. So going back to that aspect of the group for knitting, always ensure as an administrator that that group will allow emergency or disaster-related information to be shared to the group in the event of a disaster or of an emergency. That is not the type of thing you delete. Once it's posted, or if you've posted it there to notify the group members, then that's fine. But if a member posts it, then it's better to share the link to the emergency group, ask them to join the other group. When you see they've joined the other group or they confirm they're on the other group, then by all means delete the messages off of the knitting group. Okay, always ensure that the posts are legally permitted and the law. And there I think my voice note's going da-da-da-da again. Always ensure that the posts are legally permitted and within constraints of the law. You cannot, you must not ever allow illegal content to be posted to your group. Remember, you are legally liable along with the person that posts it. Specificity in culture, languages, race, color, creed, religion. You need to ensure that your groups remain neutral and impartial at all times, especially emergency groups and general community groups. Look, it's a different story if community members want to get together and form a group to discuss politics of one party or well, if there are group members that want to go and do that, they're more than welcome to do it. That is comes under the freedom of association. They can create a group of their own accord, and people that would like to join the group, they can join the group. And therefore, on the general community groups, not the emergency groups, perhaps just allow those people to share their link once in a blue moon and let them share that link once in a blue moon so that they can, in actual fact, attract members who would like to associate with their group. Otherwise, I know that there are times many people will play the race card, which is unfortunate. I want to cover that in the next voice note, which will be number 20, I believe it is. Right, so I'm ending this voice note off now. Voice note number October 2024. Just on a final note with regards to racist remarks or racist claims. Due to the diversity of the groups, one needs to have a very strict balance between the purpose of the group and the diversity of the community. And in particular, groups or emergency-related groups. Every single group member and every single administrator And if groups have got dispatches, please, ladies and gentlemen, do not ever play the race card. Race has got nothing to do with emergency situation. And that is something that has to be clearly understood. And in 99% of all general community discussion groups, race will be, or racial discussions will be the cause of division within not only the community, but most definitely within the group. So no matter what you may feel or what, please, for the integrity of a WhatsApp group overall, steer clear of all potential racial remarks or comments, and especially racial accusations. Now, administrators, remember that you are responsible for what is posted on the group. And racial accusations and remarks are not permitted under any circumstances, not in a public domain. In all honesty, if a person feels that the being racist towards them, which in today's day and age, we know it happens, they must rather take that up with the South African Human Rights Council directly. So admins, if somebody posts something of a racial nature, delete the remark. And if that person posts it again, remove them from the group, end of the story. Any person making racial accusations on a group, remove that remark without hesitation. And the same thing applies if that person continues. I put them in the category of either being agitators, or they are trying to bully the group or a person into doing something which is not appropriate for the group. And in terms of the Cyber Crimes Act, bullying is a criminal offense. Sorry, I see my voice notes going da. Those remarks, those connotations, racist connotations, and those users who are practicing such behavior on public-facing WhatsApp groups, you have to remove them for the integrity of your, especially if it is an emergency-related group. No person may, in actual fact, bring this into the foreground on a WhatsApp group in the same manner. You know, I think maybe the best way or the best analogy I could provide is you've got an emergency situation and person A calls for an ambulance, and then person B refuses to help them because of the fact that person A believes in A, B, C, D, whereas person B believes in X, Y, and Z. That is not appropriate. If you're an administrator, you have to be neutral and impartial. If you are a dispatcher, you have to be neutral and impartial. And if you are a group administrator, you need to, not a group administrator, a group member, then you as a member need to be responsible and adult enough and mature enough to understand that your administrators and your dispatchers have to remain neutral and impartial, and they cannot take sides with anybody. And if you've got a problem and you think that they are in actual fact being racist or whatever, take it up with them privately, keep it off of the group. It doesn't belong on the groups, and don't go to another group and go and stir it up and agitate the other group, because then you must be removed from every group available. Okay, I think that closes it off in essence with regards to the administrator roles. In the next section, I want to discuss using WhatsApp for emergency purposes in particular, which is in actual fact a lead up to looking at how dispatchers should in actual fact start working, and how they should operate. So I'm going to end the voice note number 20 now, and we'll continue in 21 shortly.